Hey kids, all right. Good morning. Did you miss me? Yeah. We're gonna do a little recap of the various Donald Trump court cases going on and talk a little bit about how those work and what we can kind of expect from it. So y'all hold on to your butts. I hope you already got your hot cup of coffee ready to rock and roll, and let's do this. Hey, whoa. Oh, I almost hit that intro button, but I gotta throw a shout out to Miss Cindy D there, because First Blood. Oh, that's the wrong button. That's the one I was looking for. Whew. It's like I stepped away from the studio for almost a week and I forgot how my buttons work. Good morning, y'all. I'm not going to give out too much information, but it is no secret that we've been planning to move. And that is pretty much where I've been since Friday, sort of. Funny story, on Saturday I was packing boxes trying to get us ready to move, and I get a phone call from a local politician. Hey, can you do me a campaign commercial? I need it by Wednesday. I'm like, what do you mean you need it by Wednesday? Right? Little perspective. I make videos. I do films, movies, marketing products, campaign propaganda. But if everybody's got their clothes on, I will point a camera at it for money. And I'm even a little flexible on that. You gotta free the nipple rally in front of the Capitol, and I'll go swing a camera at it. Hell yeah. But my normal turnaround, I always quote 4 to 6 weeks. It is absolutely possible to do something faster than that, but it takes an act of absolute willful defiance of God. So I shot it on Sunday and I delivered it on Tuesday morning. I'm kind of proud of that. But the news is I bought a house yesterday. 5 bedrooms, 8 acres, and a local population of less than 200 people. Yep. We're moving in the right direction. That said, a little bit of housekeeping there. I will almost certainly be doing a show tomorrow morning and Friday morning. And then, so obviously after the show today, I'm going to be moving, and after the show tomorrow, I'm going to be moving on Friday. And I think where that's going to put me is I'm going to break the studio down last for 2 reasons. So I can do Firearms Friday for you guys Friday morning, and I hope you'll join me. And because that shoot that I did Sunday and delivered Tuesday morning, it was a very fast, rushed job. So I don't actually expect the client to need any changes, but just in case, I'm going to leave the studio set up for right now, until I speak with them and figure out if there need to be any changes done, and that way I can knock those out and deliver those before I tear everything down. And hopefully what that's going to look like is on Friday after the show, I'm going to tear down the studio, pack it up, move it to the new house, set it back up in the new place, and be ready to do the show come Monday morning. But I can't be sure about that. Because even if I get all that done in time for Monday morning, I have no guarantee that I'll have internet turned on at the new house by then. So we'll see. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure we're doing a show tomorrow and Friday. I'm 50-50 on Monday. But that's where we're at. Now, where we're at, got to talk about these Trump cases. And there's a not Trump case that kind of made me want to talk about the Trump cases that actually goes so far as to put them all into perspective. And now I've forgotten the dude's damn name. See if I can find him real quick. Okay, yeah, got him. So I'm gonna get to that in a minute. And for now, this is an older article that we've got here, but it has the cases listed, and that's all I need to have kind of a visual checklist to talk about. So the several cases against Donald Trump, you've got the classified documents case in Florida. You've got the hush money case in New York. The January 6th case in Washington. The 2020 election meddling case in Georgia, which let me remind you is a RICO case, which is psychotic. The E. Jean Carroll case, and the Trump Organization civil fraud case. And I'm just going to take a minute. Like I said, this is an older article, so we're not going to be reading the article so much because it's 2 months old. It's not that old. I mean, it's recent enough that it's got the $88 million combined award to E. Jean Carroll in it. And I'll get to E. Jean Carroll last because that was probably the weakest of the cases, and it's important to understand that. So let's cover the classified documents case first. In the classified documents case in the classified documents case, the essential assertion is that Donald Trump, who, just for anybody that might have forgotten, was in fact the President of the United States of America, is accused of having been in possession of classified documents at his private home. There's a couple things that need to be considered here. As the president, he had, at a minimum until he left office, the unilateral authority to declassify documents. The argument has been made that that authority is not absolute, because there are certain things that are so secret that they're not even available to the president. That's bullshit. That is not the case. That's just not how it works. And legally, tactically, and strategically, the reason the president has that unilateral authority, and absolutely, this is an absolute statement, no one else does, is for diplomatic engagement. The president can discuss any classified information with any ally or even enemy with whom he has there are no restrictions on it, but it's because you want the president to have at his disposal all the leverage available to engage in diplomacy. Now, that said, for literally every other person in the world, your access to classified information is restricted. either you're not cleared to any level of classified information, or you are cleared to a level of classified information. And even if you're cleared to the highest level, that TS, that top secret secured compartmentalized information, you're only cleared on TSSCI to your relevant branch. You have to get read on, right? So if you're a CIA spook that works on human trafficking, then you can know everything about it, and with a focus on, let's say, South America, then you can know everything about that operation. But if you're a CIA spook who focuses on human trafficking in Africa, you and your buddy that works the South America mission can't talk to each other about the particulars of your separate missions unless there's an overlap that creates that phrase you've all heard in movies, need to know. The president always has the need to know on everything. Right? There are a few of the secretaries that have almost that level of access, but even they don't have the authority to just unilaterally declassify documents. Why is all that important? Hillary Clinton was also accused of mishandling classified information, suffered no consequences. In fact, James Comey came out and made a press conference where he said, in no uncertain terms, we know beyond the shadow of a doubt that she violated the law, is guilty of this very serious crime, and that is having been merely the Secretary of State, who, like I just detailed, is on that long list of literally everyone but the president that lacks that authority. And Comey came out and said, she did it. We know she did it. We absolutely know she did it. But we're not going to charge her because we don't think she meant to do it. You know, maybe it was an accident. Joe Biden also did it. Right? I mean, so did Obama, so did Bush and the other Bush and the Clinton, right? Every president's done it. It's a common practice. They retain files from their administration for their presidential library, right? But see, here's the thing. Joe Biden is president as of 2021. And all the classified documents that he has very, very obviously mishandled, right? We have another case here where a prosecutor came out and said, okay, there is no doubt that Joe Biden committed this crime. In fact, he committed it overtly, repeatedly, and left these classified documents unsecured in at least 9 separate locations across no less than at least 3 states. But we're not going to charge him because we don't think he's mentally competent to stand trial. He's totally cool to run for president again, right? Just, not mentally competent to stand trial. The point. The case is an absolute fabrication, right? And let me remind you, Biden did the thing that Trump is accused of doing before he was the president. So even if we very generously assert that they all committed the exact same particular act, only Trump has an argument in that the president has the authority to handle those documents in the way that he did. Only Donald Trump has that defense. And only Donald Trump is being prosecuted for this crime. Which, by the way, in the case of someone other than the president, is a very serious crime, legally speaking. And all that's without even going down the rabbit hole of the obviously staged quote, crime scene photos and all that. Right? Okay. Now, we're up to the hush money case on Stormy Daniels. And nope, I'm going to put that one off for a second because there's more news around that today. So I'm going to get to I'm not doing these in any particular order except that the two sex scandal cases I want to cover last. So there's classified documents in Florida. The January 6th case in Washington. The 4 counts are conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. Whoa. Okay, I'm not crazy, am I? It does say this. Obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding. And conspiracy against rights in his relentless pursuit to reverse the outcome of the 2020 election and remain in office. Okay, let's talk a little bit about the 2020 election. I'm going to say something that is going to bother the people that enjoy my show. Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. He lost that election fair and square. And it is because of his particular lack of experience in an important aspect of the job. So let me rewind you back to the bump stock question. After the Las Vegas shooting, we got the bump stock ban via presidential fiat. Because Trump was naive. He made a mistake. He assumed that you can deal with Democrats, right? Politicians generally, but Democrats particularly, in good faith. He made the mistake of Chamberlain. He attempted to appease the enemy. He offered a concession. He thought, okay, these Democrats got their panties all in a twist about gun control. The Second Amendment clearly says that gun control is a non-starter. So, you know what? I'll throw you a bone, maybe shut you up. That's not how it works. You cannot appease evil men. What did appeasement get you? Appeasement took us from what two people do in the privacy of their own bedroom, what consenting adults in the privacy of their own bedroom, to notorious advocacy for malicious intentional medical malpractice and the mutilation of children. Appeasement and tolerance took us from safe, legal, and rare to once the child is born, we'll make him comfortable and then discuss what's to be done with him. Appeasement took us from pensions should be handled by the government to guarantee their solvency in perpetuity to the, within a decade, imminent dissolution of the Social Security system, which was created originally to abolish retirement and make slaves of you all the way to your deathbed. Appeasement is suicide. Pacifism is the opposite of decency. Appeasement is moral and literal suicide. So you cannot continue to make those concessions. And that's how Trump lost 2020. The citizen understands that what an election is candidates present their arguments, present their plans, present their platforms, describe their positions on the issues. They make the case for themselves as the best possible candidate to fill a political role. which means to take on a job and perform that job, whether that job is administrative, tactical, strategic, financial, active, whatever. Any election, is, as the common citizen understands it, essentially a job interview where several people want the job and we all get the one that the fewest people hate the least. Hopefully. The fact is, I don't have to sit here and make wild claims about voting machines or 2,000 mules or foreign interference or any of that. I don't have to do any of that to make the case that because Democrats, everywhere that it is legal and not legal, are actively engaged in ballot harvesting, which means that they physically approach voters and ask them for their mail-in ballots or their absentee ballots. The fact that that alone happens means that elections have nothing to do with votes. The votes are simply the fiat currency that represents the political will to pursue corruption. Uncle Steve, to be clear, I'm not discounting that any of those things happened or played a part. My point is that the existence of ballot harvesting alone means that an election is not what the common citizen understands it to be. But by all public appearances, Donald Trump ran his campaign under the assumption that his opponent was a good faith actor engaged in the same fair game that he thought he was playing. Donald Trump sat down to play a game of checkers with somebody who was willing to play whack-a-mole on the same board, right? He lost the election, and he gave up the bump stocks because he made the mistake of believing that Democrats are decent people. There is not a person alive today who can vote Democrat and not clearly be morally corrupt, morally bankrupt, unforgivable, but not unredeemable. Uncle Steve says it was something most of us have never seen until the pandemic, and that's fair. The addition of the infinite mail-in ballot as a result of the pandemic, or as part of the pandemic, that is something where, well, it's almost microcosmic of what we saw with the 2020 election. 2020 was so obviously corrupt that an outsized number of people, to include a large number of Democrats, are intellectually incapable of ignoring it and pretending like the corruption didn't happen. The fact is that gamesmanship and corruption and graft has been a part of every election forever. The courts and the politicians and the lawmakers and even law enforcement officials have been very clear on this. There is so much corruption in every election without exception that it is impossible for the courts to prosecute all of it, and so they choose to prosecute none of it. Because it's such a large quantity of crime that not only can the court not process all of it, but attempting to process any part of it depletes their capacity to process any other criminal proceeding at all. That, by the way, is in every election up to 2020 as well. Not just, I'm not saying that that's just the case with 2020, but in 2020, they tried several different tricks. I'm way off topic now. I've gone way too far down this rabbit hole. In 2020, they tried so many different tricks that if any one of those tricks were to be noticed, it makes all the other tricks more obvious. And so a few people noticed one trick and a few other people noticed another trick. And then once you've noticed one trick, you start saying, hey, wait a minute. Like, I see this con job happening right here. Like, I live in Georgia. When the pipe burst, it turns out there was never a burst pipe at all. That was an absolute lie. And we're sitting here in Georgia like, now hold on a minute. If they lied through their teeth about that, what happened with the thing in Arizona? What happened with the thing in Michigan? Wait a minute. You had precincts with 110% Democrat turnout and no Republicans? You know, I might not have seen that if I'd have thought the pipe burst, because I might not have been looking. Way off topic. Back to the cases. But that was the point. Donald Trump lost 2020 because he made the naive mistake of assuming that Democrats are capable of morality, and they're not. He made the mistake of assuming that, well, they're just a little bit of baby murderer. And it's just not the case. So speaking, off that whole riff, the third case to cover is the 2020 election meddling case in Georgia. In this case, what we have, and remember, there's not a recording of him saying it. There's a transcript that somebody wrote where they said that Donald Trump told Brian Kemp to go find 11,000 votes. And no. Context matters a lot, especially in a state where we had an obvious hoax, right? In Georgia, they told us that a water main burst in the ballot counting in the polling place, and so they had to stop counting and come back and count later. And then it turned out that the pipe never burst. There was not a burst water main in Fulton County. That was a lie. And on that basis alone, Donald Trump had the election stolen from him. Right. That right there is all you need to know that the Democrat does not act in good faith. And then before I get to the sex scandals, I'm just going to quickly touch on the civil fraud case in New York with, I love that Viva Fry refers to him as with nipple Judge Engeron because of the pictures of this wrinkled up old man with the obvious barbells through his t-shirt. But so nipple Judge Engeron found Trump to be guilty of fraud. And remember, this was a directed verdict. There was never a trial or a presentation of evidence. The thing that they referred to as a trial was on sentencing, after the judge, in direct and open contravention of all existing evidence, which included literally no more than the claim by the DA that Trump misrepresented the values of properties, and that claim, without substantial evidence, was rebutted by every single lender in question. Every person who would be an alleged victim in this case said, oh no, we made a fortune and he paid back all the loans. And by the way, he cannot have misrepresented the value of his properties in a meaningful way because, y'all, let me, I just went through this, right? You can say your property is worth whatever you want to say it's worth. An appraiser might disagree with you, and the county tax commissioner might disagree with you, and the potential buyer might disagree with you. Now, I can't argue with the county tax assessor. You can, but county tax assessor says it's worth what it's worth, and you pay your tax bill based on that. It's extortion, right? It's armed robbery, but it is what it is for now. The appraiser says it's worth what it's worth. And okay, cool. If it appraises above the value that you already agreed to buy it for or sell it for, then you get a little something out of the deal if you're the buyer, and you're basically unharmed as the seller because you already agreed to sell it for what you agreed to sell it for. As the seller, if I say, my Coleman tent on the beach is worth $150 million, and that's what I'm willing to sell it for, I don't have to take anything less than $150 million. If somebody comes along and says, nah, it's a $50 tent, I'll give you $50 for it. I'm like, no, I don't want $50 for it. I want $150. I'm good. Hey, I'm not going to sell it at that price. But if I say that's what it's worth because that's what I'll take, that's the only amount that I'll take for it, right? No less than that. I have not defrauded anybody. This is what I want for my property. This is what I value the property at personally. Now, if somebody agrees to buy it at that price, and then an appraiser comes through and says, no, it's a Coleman tent, it's worth $50. Well, at that point, the buyer can back out. He say, whoa, I thought it had like gold rods or something in it. No, just a tent. Oh, well then I'm backing out now. Right? At that point, when that appraisal comes back super low, you could, as the buyer, you can just walk away. Earnest money, all that, but that's in the weeds that we don't need to get into for this conversation. But what happened here is Trump represented the value of the property to a bank and said, this is the collateral that I want to use to take out a loan. And the bank said, cool, you said it's worth X. We're going to come check it out, and we're going to decide what it's worth. Okay, we think it's worth Y. And our appraiser says it's worth Z. We're going to meet you in the middle, and now we've come all the way back around to A. And this is a figure that we've agreed on. Before that loan is made, the petitioner attests that he believes the value of the property is X. The lender argues the value of the property is Y, and the appraiser gives a value that may or may not match those two, might be above the highest, below the lowest, might be right in the middle. And that creates a negotiation where both entrants into the voluntary contract agree on a value. So to be clear, in the Trump Organization civil fraud case, it is not merely the case that he legally did not commit fraud here, unless the accusation includes that he somehow coerced or extorted the lender into agreeing to be defrauded. It is metaphysically impossible for fraud to have existed in that case. They still found him guilty by fiat. The judge just decided he was guilty. There was no jury trial there. Don't forget that. And then we get to the two cases of sexual misconduct, we'll call them. But I'm just going to leave it on my face. I don't need to come back to this anymore. So first, we'll talk about the Stormy Daniels case. Stormy Daniels I'm sure many of y'all remember when we first did the show, when we first talked about that on this show a few years ago, because we're talking all the way back in, was it? Yeah, it was during the 2016 election. Stormy Daniels pops on the scene with Trump's lawyer Michael Cohen, and I think her lawyer was that Avenatti guy, who, by the way, is in prison for, among other things, fraud. I'm pretty sure he's lost it. He's been disbarred. And she came out and said that she had sex with Donald Trump, but he made her sign a non-disclosure agreement and paid her $130,000 to sign the non-disclosure agreement. Trump has maintained since then, it's 2024, so we're rapidly approaching this being a 1-decade case. Donald Trump has maintained that he never had sex with Stormy Daniels. Now, let's be clear. Donald Trump has had 3 wives. And they're gorgeous. We've seen the pictures. And they all have something in common, which is they kind of look a lot like Stormy Daniels. Let's be perfectly fair. The Donald has one major vice. He's a philanderer. And he has a very clear type. And Stormy fits that type. So when the story first broke in the National Enquirer, I believe, Stormy said she had sex with Trump. Trump said it never happened. And here on the BFM, Cameron and I pretty much agreed. I don't know, dude. I'm pretty sure he fucked her. Like, all things being equal, she's a busty blonde and the man has a type and a pattern of behavior. Sorry. I mean, I like the Donald, but I'm gonna have to throw this one to the porn star. But then she recanted her testimony. Now it was run on like page 34E of whatever paper ran it, right? It was buried and hidden, but Stormy Daniels actually recanted. She said, everything I said before was a lie. I never had sex with Donald Trump. And at that point, it became unclear as to whether or not the NDA had ever even happened. Right? Well, since then, she has recanted that retraction and come back and said, okay, look, I lied about lying about having sex with Donnie Two Scoops. I lied about lying about it. It did happen. I changed my mind. Now, like I said before, when the story first happened, we were pretty sure, I get it, because he's got this ironclad and very expensive prenup with Melania, and Cameron and I were talking about this before the show. That's a very compelling motive for Donald Trump to lie about sleeping with another woman. Okay, fair. But because of the way she's gone back and forth, and there's only one thing we know to be true in this case, and that is that Stormy Daniels has lied about whether or not she slept with Donald Trump. Right? Because either she did or she didn't, and she has claimed both. Only one of these things can be true. She has stated both of these things as statements of fact. Ergo, one of these claims must be false. So Stormy Daniels was on the stand yesterday, and we know she's a liar. And she goes into explicit detail, which I've gone further into detail on this particular case than I would like to if my kids are still watching. So y'all are going to have to go and look at the sordid details of spanking with newspapers on your own. I'm not going to go down that particular rabbit hole this morning. But to me, it smells like what happened was back in 2016, the lawyer that got trolled by 4chan into falsely claiming that he had a bunch of Justice Kavanaugh victims tried to run an extortion gambit against Donald Trump with Stormy Daniels to extort money out of the Donald. That's what it smells like actually happened to me. I maintained that I still believed they probably slept together until some more of these details came out. And the fact is, the only evidence to support the claim is that she made the claim and that they have met each other in public. But there's no evidence of them ever being alone together under any circumstances. They've been seen in public at public events. And they've been seen speaking to each other, and I believe there's a picture of a hug in public. But that's thin evidence to suggest a sordid liaison. And then, finally, we come to the case of E. Jean Carroll. Now, the Stormy Daniels case is still ongoing, but the case of E. Jean Carroll has already been settled. And that one, this woman is such a psychotic that as evidence for her psychosis, I would present to you the names of her cats, which are so vulgar and psychotic that I will not say them aloud on my show while my kids might be watching with my folks. Just to be clear. Or as clear as I can be and still expect my kids to love me. This woman told an outrageous story about how Donald Trump, we'll say, mistreated her in the Bergdorf Goodman department store. And the story is outrageous, unbelievable. She cannot say when it happened, just that it happened 30 years ago. Brings in a dress that she says is the dress she was wearing at the time that it happened. A dress which was designed and first premiered into existence 15 years after the latest possible case that she could have, that her claim could lay in. Right. Basically, she says the event happened 30 or so years ago and the address was created 20 or so years ago. And there's too much gap there for that to have been the dress. So that at least is a lie. To be very clear, Trump was acquitted, or not acquitted because it was a civil case. Acquitted is the wrong word. The jury found that there was no evidence to support the claim of rape against Donald Trump, but then went on to declare him liable for sexual battery. After which Donald Trump tweeted out something. I don't have the exact quote pulled up in front of me, but he tweeted out, or truthed out, because he was still banned from Twitter at the time, that he was totally innocent, and the jury couldn't find him guilty. And that the charges were bogus. Right? Didn't say anything about her in the particular tweet. Now, he has said publicly that she's crazy, that he doesn't know her, and she's not his type, And, y'all, if you've seen pictures of this woman, like everything I said about Stormy Daniels previously and Trump's wives and the man has a type, E. Jean Carroll is, without being grotesquely overweight, the opposite of that type. I mean, the bitch is scary looking. Sorry, kids. And then, of course, it turns out that the story she told about how the incident went down is essentially just a scene-for-scene, shot-for-shot summary of an episode of a procedural cop drama. I forget if it was CSU or NCIS or which one it was, but one of those procedural cop dramas had a show where the episode was exactly that. And apparently there was also an episode of Seinfeld where one of the characters described the scene similarly as a bad dream. Basically, she stole a TV plot and used it to extort the Donald. And here's the thing that brought all of this. Right. Remember at the beginning of the show, I said I was going to put this one to the end because there's a development that got me in the headspace that I wanted to recap all the stories. And this is where that happens. Remember that there was E. Jean Carroll is making a claim of an incident that occurred 30 years ago that she never reported or talked about to anybody ever. There's this thing called a statute of limitations. But the state of New York passed a law called the Adult Survivors Act. I'll pull that up from this link real quick. See if they give a good explanation. But basically, she was way outside of the statute of limitations. Oh, screw you, New York Post. Okay. She was way outside of the statute of limitations, and the state of New York passed a law called the Adult Survivors Act, which basically allows the state to ignore the statute of limitations just because. Just whatever. We don't care. Statute of limitations? What are laws for? Fuck laws. We don't need laws. And so E. Jean Carroll was able to bring her 30-year-old claim despite the law forbidding it until super conveniently in 2022, New York said, you know what? We don't care about the law. We want you to go and character assassinate this presidential candidate. Well, Kevin Parker, who represents Brooklyn as a New York state senator, has been accused of rape by a woman who, in a similar story, bringing this charge up from so long ago that she has to use the Adult Survivors Act to be allowed to file the claim. Parker voted for the Adult Survivors Act, which has allowed the lawsuit based on an alleged 2004 incident to move forward. And now, according to the advocacy group, okay, here we go. I voted in favor of the Adult Survivors Act to ensure all New Yorkers can seek justice and be heard, Parker said in a statement. These allegations are absolutely untrue. My work in advocacy will continue. He is now out there arguing that the law itself is unconstitutional. Funny story, because he voted for this. And yes, let's be very clear. We are talking about a New York Democrat, a black politician, with an obvious racial animus and motivation who voted to pass a law with the almost explicitly expressed purpose of exposing Donald Trump to not only illegal, but facially illegitimate legal jeopardy. But now he thinks the law is unconstitutional because he got caught with his dick in the toaster. That is the funniest thing I have heard all week. Okay. Because I've missed the show a couple days in a row and I'm likely to miss a show or two next week, we'll see what happens. I've gone over about 20 minutes, a little more than 20 minutes. So I need to put a button in it there because, y'all, I got a truck to load and a van and a trailer. And it's a long-ass drive to my new place. And I'm hoping to get there before the new welcome mat. So, thanks for watching this morning, guys. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.